So I like hearing stories from working appraisers, and I've got one for you today. It really isn't a story per se. It's a change. It's a modification from the way they were doing business to how they do business now. And what I'm talking about, I had a course offering, and it was adjacent to an appraisal conference. I believe it was the summit, and this young man was in class. He was very attentive, very eager to learn, and you can tell he really wants to do a good job. In fact, he has a family business, and we're going to talk about that and the modification to their practice when we come back. You're not going to want to miss it. Come on back. Hi, this is Brian Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Come on over to APPRAISERELearning.com. You'll be glad you did. We have CE courses. We have live courses. We have virtual courses. We have self-paced courses. We're involved in almost all the appraisal conference space. We own Val Expo now, and we love that conference. And we also love partnering with the NAA to bring to you the National Association of Appraiser and Appraiser eLearning conferences. That's the Appraisal Summit, as well as ACTS, the Appraisal Conference and Trade Show. And that's the next one on the calendar. So check it out. You can find that at APPRAISERELearning.com under the Events tab. Going to be in San Antonio this year. Should be a really good time. I'd like to thank my sponsor, LIA Administrators and Insurance, for their continued support of the Appraisal Update Podcast. Check them out at liability.com. And without further delay, I'd like to bring in my special guest, Mr. Taston. Welcome, Taston, to the program.
Hi, how you doing today, Brian?
I'm great. Well, thanks for carving out some time to join us today. So before we get into the topic that we really want to talk about, why don't you introduce yourself to my audience? Tell them a little bit about you and what it is you do, and then kind of talk about your family, because you guys have a really kind of a special appraisal firm. And so talk on that as well.
Yeah, well, my name is Taston, I guess. Based out of Northern Colorado. I'm a licensed appraiser, currently in the process of getting my certification. And then as Brian has inspired me at the last ACTS conference and this year's Appraisal Summit, I'm looking forward to start working on my GEF, or my general certification, after I get my certified appraisal status. But yeah, I work at a family firm. We're KTS Appraisals. My father got into the appraisal business in the early 90s, about 92, 93, here in Northern Colorado. And from there, he has built quite the company. We're a small residential firm is what we primarily do, as well as after I graduated college, was getting through college in the late to mid 2000s. The economy wasn't all that well. I was looking at joining the Army, and my dad told me, why don't you come give me a year, come work for me for a year. And now here I am after being his assistant and a data entry guy, and 7-8 years later now, or I guess coming up on 9 now, I'm in this with him. And we brought my little sister in. Her name's Ellie McManus. She's a licensed appraiser as well. She retired from professional golf. We convinced her to come work with us. And we're just slowly growing and looking forward to the future.
That's great. That's great. And saw all three of you recently in Las Vegas at the conference. And I love the enthusiasm that Taston, you as well as your family have for the profession. It seems like, your dad is one of those folks that's very positive. He's not someone talking about doom and gloom and the appraiser profession is, over. He seems very positive, and he talks about the next generation and what you and your sister could do. I know on one of the breaks, I spoke to him at length about Certified General, and I don't know if he shared this with you, but I gave him a nudge too. I told him, I told him that he should. I said, how cool would it be if you did that with your kids, right? Because your dad's certified res. And I said, how
Yeah.
cool would it be if all three of you took that path? And he kind of hesitated at first, but I think maybe he thought about it a little bit. So who knows?
He's
Maybe.
he's thinking about it. He's grumbling a little bit. He's like, yeah, I was looking to slow down, but maybe I'll look at doing this with you guys because this kind of be fun. So
That would be
yeah,
wonderful. Well, you guys are going to have to keep me up to date on the journey, whether he tags along or not. But I hope that he does. I mean, that would be very cool for all three of you to try and upgrade at the same time. It'd be a really great thing. So let's talk a little bit. I don't know if it was the first time we met. I guess it was maybe the first time we had met when you were in that FHA class.
that was.
Yeah. So Tass, were all three of you in that, or was it just you?
Just
I can't.
Kent and myself. My dad and
Okay.
myself, and my sister was not in attendance yet.
Okay. Yeah, I think she was well, you guys don't have trainees, but she was in training, I think, at that time,
Yeah.
because she was at the conference later. But yeah, so it was an FHA class. We're talking about navigating the minimum property requirements, the minimum property standards, and talking all about FHA actually. But somehow we got on the topic of using mobile technology, I believe, right? Using a device out in the field. And up until that point, kind of walk us through how your office did it. I mean, what did you use to collect the data out in the field? Just tell your story.
Prior to that, we were paper and clipboard, and we were using the Disto laser measure, which was great. That was a huge innovation from the old fiberglass tape days. As a kid, having to roll that up for my dad, that's a skill that never came in handy. um, but yeah, we were, that, and we were using the Nikon Coolpix camera still. So we'd walk around, we'd measure the exterior, with our clipboard and paper, and take all the photos with our little, Nikon camera, and fill out our URAR form and draw the sketch. And um, about 2 years prior to that, though, we had looked at the app. I had looked at the app when it was kind of first released by Total, and it just didn't quite work really well. And I was pretty anti-app at that point because I was like, it was too buggy, it didn't work. And I remember being in that FHA class, and you called us out, in a really great way. You're like, why aren't you? Why would you not be using this? And you challenged us to try it again. If it didn't work, then great. Like, you can go back to your old method, but you pretty much made a guarantee that it would optimize our efficiency. And when we got back from conference, because every time we go to a conference, we try and take away like at least 3 to 5 things we want to work on over that next year from the conference, because you can't work on it all at once. But that was our big one. And it was one of those things where it optimized us really quick. Just for like instance, within the appraisal industry, right? Like, how many people went from using, these old cameras, right, with film, that you'd have to go get your film developed, and they'd have to, put those in the physical report to, this is one of my dad's very first Kodak digital cameras, right? It looks like it should be something from Star Wars, right? And it's one of those things of, okay, my dad has always done things to keep up with technology, but we kind of got stuck in the way we always used to do it. And you challenge us to do something different and use the technology. And it was easy to do, easy to implement. It took a little bit of time, but I mean, it changed how we have done business over the past 12 months. And to the point where we have now looked at all kinds of other newer technologies that we've implemented because you challenged us to look at that app and the scan to sketch. I think one of the most important things, though, for us is that when we were with the paper clipboard walking around and the Nikon digital camera, we didn't look, I guess, too, like we were the most professional. Like, we're really professional. We really are. Like, we show up to our clients with these nice shirts and our company logo. But now if you show up, like I upgraded, and because of you, I had to spend a couple $1,000 on a new phone. But now when we show up, I look also substantially more professional. Like, nope, it's all on my phone. Look at this. I'm gonna scan your house in with the scan to sketch. People love seeing that, and they're
Yeah.
blown away. And it instills confidence, I believe, too, of like, look, we're serious about what we do, and you need to know that you're getting the best technology available today so that we can give you the best service, right?
Yeah.
So I thank you for challenging us in that
Well,
aspect.
well,
Change.
you guys did all the heavy lifting, right? I just gave you a gentle nudge, I think. But
Yeah.
Tesson, let's. There's a lot of people. I just had a class, and this is one of the questions I asked. I said, "How many of you are using technology out in the field?" And believe it or not, I think it was 80% of my audience was not using technology in the field. They're still using pen and paper. And so if you're listening right now, you're probably in the masses, right? But there's a lot of what I call limiting beliefs. I can't see it in the sunlight. What if I drop it and break it? What if it's raining? What were some of your firm's limiting beliefs? I mean, you were doing what your dad told you to do, right? So this is just how he taught you. But when you started talking about it, what were some of the pushbacks that you and some of your firm team members had with let's just do the clipboard and pen and pad?
I guess the big fear was that having to learn something new was going to take more time. And, we were really proficient in walking around with the disto and whatnot, being able to go through a house. And because when you start to look at something like that, you're going to have to change your entire order of operations. And changing your entire order of operations can be scary.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is it going to be a waste of our time when time is so valuable, especially when you're actively appraising every day? What's my paycheck going to look like because I have to learn something new? What if it doesn't run right? Like, how accurate is it? And it just takes time for you to have to invest in yourself and invest in your business. It's like anything else. Like, the juice is worth the squeeze if you invest in yourself and your business. And it was one of those things of where we're really lucky that at that point in time we could still have my father doing his thing with the clipboard appraising, and while my sister was a trainee, it's like, okay, like, you're new into this industry and this line of work. Like, Ellie, you try and figure out the scan to sketch piece, and I'm going to figure out how to upload and download reports. So we made it substantially easier by breaking it off into smaller sections instead of trying to figure it all out at once. And I think that's one of the biggest hangups is you look at this new technology and you watch these videos and it's like, holy cow, it can do so much, but it's daunting, right? The order of operations.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things, it's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Sure.
So
So let me. You made a comment that you have to change the order of operations.
Mhm.
Tell me specifically what were those changes?
Oh Lord, everything from uh, the biggest thing we had, so I mean, I'm almost speechless about it. I'm stuttering. How much, like, it changed the way we do everything from when we accept an order to when we send out an order. It
Mm.
changed everything from the way we download from our clients the engagement letters and we get our file set up. The big no-no always was don't merge reports. And how many appraisers merge reports? Because it's like, well, I've already done something in that area, in that neighborhood, so let me merge it in and I have all my information.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got rid of that completely. And it was like, from there, we have a blank kind of setup. And from there, it's like, we can gather a lot of our data before going out, having our UR, and potential comps already pulled and put into the report prior to going out, which saves us time overall, as well as um, you know being able to have more of that market data available like now and as of that day. I mean, pulling all that data as of the effective date when you're going to go out to have all of your data, and especially being able to put that into the app where you're not having to fumble with all the papers and the files and whatnot, to how we walk through a house, to how we observe it, to the big thing too is being able to take voice notes. We utilize that when you walk through a house instead of taking all that time to try and reread your writing on the notes that you take, which got really fast at shorthand. By doing that, now it's like I can just walk through the house and I can just talk what I see. And then using other platforms of other different AI technologies, I can help clean that up and be able to, really provide the best service to our clients. So really, by going more digital, getting rid of the paper, it changed all of our order operations. And it only took about 2-ish weeks, maybe at maximum, for it to really take hold and for us to get moving really quickly. So it wasn't a huge chunk of time where we had to redo everything.
Yeah, yeah. So there's people listening right now that say, I probably should do that. But there's been a resistance, and face it, you said it earlier, change is hard. We get in a routine, and my listeners have heard me say that a million times, so I'm not going to continue to talk about, change. But what would you say some of the challenges were for you folks adapting this change, going from a clipboard, pad, and pen to the electronic mobile technology? What are some of the challenges that you guys faced, and how'd you overcome those?
Trusting it is the biggest thing, right? Because when you use the scan to sketch, understanding how that works, it's really odd. Instead of truly trusting, when you have that laser measure or that disto where you can see that exact measurement, that was a tough thing was to initially get over. And we did our own testing out in the field. So we'd measure a house. Like I measured my own personal house a couple different times with the disto and then using the app. And it came out that it's like the same. The other big thing that was tough to kind of really overcome with it was, just the on time, like the time like spent on site was different. And it seemed like the time spent on site, we were spending way too much time on site when we first switched to that. But you get more proficient the more you do on it. But also too, versus the clipboard and filling it out shorthand, some of those, many appraisers can probably attest that they could zip through a house pretty quick if it was vacant, right? Using the clipboard. But the biggest thing is now we spend more time on site. And I think being able to dump those data points in there immediately is helpful. Like a big part of it too was at that same conference, and the big thing that really pushed us over the boat between you and then on that Tuesday, Jessica Jenkins Tomei had a presentation on technology. And her big thing that she preached was go to the app as well. And the less you touch data points, the better. Like the less human interaction you have with data collection and then importing that into Total, the less errors you're going to have. And this is somebody who, is a chief appraiser at a major AMC saying, look, most of the issues we see are appraiser, like little errors. So just don't make them. You won't have to make them if you're touching the data points.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. So hang right there for a minute. Let me do a little bit of business. I'd like to thank my sponsor for their continued support, LIA Administrators and Insurance Services. They've been around a long time. For over 45 years, they've been offering E&O insurance to valuation professionals just like you. LIA applies superior customer service, exceptional liability education, unparalleled claim defense to serve well over 10,000 real estate professionals across the country. They offer commercial bonds, general liability, cyber liability, and so much more. Visit liability.com to learn about how LIA can protect you and your business. And thank you, LIA. Gosh, they sponsor this podcast, the Appraisal Update podcast. They occasionally sponsor the Appraisal Report webinar. They come to all the conferences, and they really support everything we do. So I can't thank LIA Administrators and Insurance Services enough. Thank you, LIA. Appreciate all you do. All right. So you talked about spending a little extra time at the site. Now, there's probably some grumbling about that. And I think that's why some appraisers have resisted a little bit. Well, look, I've got this thing down. I had some guy tell me the other day, I got this down. I get in this property, I do my thing, I'm in and out pretty quick, not cutting corners, but, sitting there and clicking on things and taking a picture, and that's going to slow me down. I know how to use this. I've been doing it for years. I'm good at it. So talk to me about that. You said it might take you a little bit more time at the site, but my question is, overall, does it make you more efficient? Are you faster or slower because you're using this technology out in the field?
We are substantially faster in the overall appraisal process, which means that we can have quicker client, contact. Overall, it is a faster process, and I think it's a substantially more thorough process as well as you're, filling that out on site. And I think that's actually a bigger positive overall, especially when the homeowner is there, or whoever your intended user might be there, if it's a private appraisal or something like that. If you're there on site and you're spending more time there, I feel like it's a big thing too, where it feels like they're also getting their money's worth, right, for what you're charging them.
Yeah, if you zip in and out in 10 minutes, they might be thinking, what, and then especially, God forbid, you miss something. And they have to call you and say, hey, you missed a bathroom, or I have 2 fireplaces, not 1. Had you been here more than 10 minutes, you might have known that, So even if you can get through it very, very quickly, there's something to be said about spending a little bit of time and providing that relationship, right? That interaction with the consumer.
Right. And one of those things too, of like being on site like that, your attention to detail and your order of operations of like how you also like inspect the property or observe the property are different, right? And the less error and the less times like having to go back for a photo, or you miss something, or you miss a bedroom, or like you didn't have a measurement that quite came through, that it just out wonky, and it's like, why is this so much larger? A lot of that is eliminated. But
it is. To your point, I just looked at a property and it didn't close. And I didn't find this days later when I'm at my office working it up, right? I knew immediately. So I went back and started checking some of my dimension. Where am I? And it's just off a little bit, slightly. But I was able to isolate, where I had a rounding error or whatever it was, and got that to close right then. So that alone is worth it to me. I know when I leave that subject property, I don't have measurement errors, because I would have caught, I guess you could have some if you made mistakes on both sides maybe, but for me, it's kind of a dummy proof system. It double checks me. And if I've made an error, I'm going to find out about it while I'm on the property, not later when I'm at the office.
No, exactly. And that's huge, right? Because when you have to go back, you don't necessarily look the best and most professional. Oh my gosh, hey, I missed this. I need to come back. So not only are you spending more time having to reschedule all that time to then drive back to that property, and then, who knows, your client or lender also probably is looking at it and they're like, how did you miss this? Like they brought this up. We found this error and you're our boots on the ground. So I think just overall, it's made us substantially more professional. And then on the back end, from once you get off of the on-site observations, it is sped up the actual data entry into the form back in the office. I don't know, has that been your case back in the office?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I've always said it's like mowing your grass twice on the same day. Why would you do that, right? If you're out in the field and you're writing down carpet, hardwood floors, crown molding, double hung windows, what do you do when you get back to the office? You data entry it or write it again. And it just doesn't make sense. And all the naysayers out there, I got somebody complaining because they said they couldn't afford one. I'm sensitive to that. And I said, if that was the case, call me. We'll try and get somebody to donate one or something. But if that's the real reason, I think most of the reason or the pushback is it's a change. And we all resist change and we're comfortable doing the things that we do and the thought of changing. So break it down. We've only got a few minutes left, but break down the pros and cons. Okay. So using a mobile device, whether it be an iPad or a tablet or even your phone mobily, what are the pros and cons of using that out in the field?
I honestly, Brian, I don't have any cons.
Okay.
Minus the fact that in the wintertime, or in the summertime, sometimes, your device gets really hot or really cold. And, in the climate that we're in, sometimes that happens where it's like, I need to cool my device off. But other than that, there's not really any downsides. It's just made us so much more efficient overall that it is worth the time for you to invest in yourself and invest in your company to just be the best that you can possibly be. It's one of those things too, where like, if change was easy, everybody would do it all of the time.
Sure.
And
sure.
It's not. It's hard to make those paradigm shifts within your business, especially if you have a successful model that's worked really well for you for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's hard to change that, right? It's scary. But overall, especially with what we have coming down the pike with the new UAD and having more data-driven reports, my Lord, the new form won't even like really compute to paper because it's a living, growing form. So you might as well get on the train now with some sort of digital app to use it, because that, or you're going to be left behind in the dust, and that means more work for the next guy, right?
For the rest of us that figure it out. Yeah. So that, you're a sharp guy. You read my mind because that was my final question and you got it. I was going to ask you about UAD with that rapidly approaching. And I know a lot of appraisers have been saying, yeah, we've been hearing that for 6 years, but I'm telling you, I just got back from Dallas and it's coming. We see it coming. Here it comes. And it's going to be happening in 2025. We don't have a drop date for when it's going to be required, but Ken DeFeo made a very, very smart comment. Another smart guy. Ken said, when the lenders start using this, and I want all the appraisers to listen to this carefully. This is Ken talking, not me, but I agree with him. When a lender starts using this UAD format, okay, the new UAD, they're going to have the ability to accept the new way and the old way, both. How long do you think they're going to continue to accept the old way when they're accepting the new way? And so if you're one of the appraisers that can only deliver in the old format and they're used to getting on board with a new delivery mechanism and they're getting comfortable with it and they're getting more and more and more and more, they're probably going to start reaching out to appraisers that are on board using that new technology and that new format. So regardless of when Fannie and Freddie make that drop date, it's probably going to be more lender driven because that's what they're going to want. They're not going to want to continue to use two platforms when we know this new one is the one that's going to be required in the very near future. Once they get up and running and utilizing that and comfortable with it, they're probably not going to be ordering in the old format very much longer. So you think if folks get on the bandwagon of using this digital technology now, getting used to this out in the field, it'll be a good prepper for UAD when they're forced to use that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't see how it can't. It's like one of the things, well, this past year we brought another appraiser with us to like the summit. She helped with our training, my sister and myself, and she was still very old school, like still up to when we just went. This is also the lady who helped train us, was like pen and paper on the clipboard. Meanwhile, Ellie and I were using the app. After she went to the summit this past, fall, a couple weeks ago, she was like, all right, you guys have beat me down. Like with everything coming down the pike, the new UAD, learning all this information, either I retire and I'm done, or my business is going to die, or I take the time and figure this out. And it's doesn't cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
It just takes time. And it's I have not yet heard of anybody who was really upset that they switched to it and they went back.
That's a great comment you just made, and we find that when people finally accept and adapt new technology, given the opportunity to go back, for instance, would you and Ellie consider going back to a clipboard, pad, and pen at this point? Yeah. I kind of thought that would be your answer. And for the appraisers listening or watching right now, those of you using more than one monitor, you're using two, maybe three monitors. Would you consider going back to using one monitor? I'm not saying could you. Of course you could. The question is, would you consider doing that if you had the option of using two or three? Would you go back to using one monitor again? And if you're being honest, I'm sure the answer is no. And the reason is because it makes you more efficient using multiple monitors. And it's fun too. You got multiple things going on at the same time, makes you more productive, more efficient. So, Taston, thank you for spending some time with me today. I know it took us a little while to connect on this because I think it was about a year ago you reached out and said, "Oh my God, we're using an iPad now," or so. And I appreciate you sharing that with me. It was very nice of you to reach out to me, and as a consequence, I've been wanting you to tell this story for a while. So, what's new? What's next? What's new on the horizon for your firm?
What's new and next is that really it's, I guess, how do I exactly state this? It's figuring out, and I think this goes for everybody within the industry, is figuring out really which analytics program works really well for you. And if you're going to go digital with the app, you can start looking at these analytics programs, and there's a lot of them out there. Mm-hmm. But the biggest key is understanding, through, AO 37, you need to understand how it works, and you need to use something that's comfortable for you. I think in tandem with the app, as well as now, we're looking at using a little bit more AI. We've been using quite a bit more AI. And even within like the general text addendum that we fill out, I mean, shoot, running that right through AI to make sure that you can remove any biased verbiage or just simple spell check and make sure it makes sense through that is increased, increased how we really feel about like our written part of our forms. But I think really what's next on the horizon for us is it's really just staying on top of the technology and showing up to conferences, plugging into these different podcasts, these different forums, not really listening to what's going on Facebook and all the appraiser drama, but really plugging yourself into what is going on within the industry and just being so much better at what's next on the horizon, really trying to track and see what like the AQB is doing, the ASB. For us in our firm, we're looking more at that aspect because it feels like we've taken that next hurdle and that next jump where we can now focus our business elsewhere within the appraisal industry instead of, last year was, okay, how do we now get to where we're at on the new digital age? So our big thing now is looking how can we try and give back to the appraisal community? And I think it's one of those things for anybody listening to this who understands how the app works or uses an analytics program, and you know of another appraiser in your market, or you've met another appraiser who's not doing that, outreach to them. And you have to give it away to keep it. I believe in that philosophy of try and help out the next guy so that they can also help somebody else out, because too, when we're talking about what we do for a living, we're here to promote the public.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure everybody is safe, but really the next big thing for us, it's really just staying on top of what is coming next and really tuning into the new UAD and making sure that we have the best data-driven reports out there, and making sure that we don't have any personal bias in there, as tough as that is. But yeah, it's just really how do we use all of the data we can get, right? I'm assuming like your MLS and our MLS, you can pull huge swaths of data and huge amounts of comps. But what do you do with that?
Right.
How do you interpret that data? I mean, shoot, I dusted off an old statistics book, to be like, okay, what does all the statistics mean, right? So it's really understanding what the data and what the data is telling us is what we're really into right now.
That's great. So being informed and furthering your education to help you guys be more efficient and just continue to grow. That's great. Taston Sick, thank you very much for spending some time with me. If somebody watching or listening would like to reach out to you and pick your brain, what's an easy way for someone to get in touch with Mr. Taston?
Yeah, you can send me an email to ktsappraisals@gmail.com. Once again, that is ktsappraisals@gmail.com. Just mention that you saw this here on the podcast, and I would love to swap information and really talk to you about it, because I've been helped out a lot, and I want to help others out too. So everybody can be the best that they can be. So thank you so much, Mr. Reynolds. I appreciate your time today.
Taston, thank you so much for coming and joining me today on the Appraisal Update Podcast. Tell Ellie and Kent I said hello, and looking forward to seeing you guys at another conference real soon. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you by Appraiser eLearning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your continued support. A special note, remember all the folks that have been impacted by the hurricanes. Say a little blessing for them, a little prayer for them. A lot of folks going through a lot of tough times right now. If you are an appraiser or know an appraiser that needs a helping hand, please remember the Appraiser Relief Fund of the National Association of Appraisers. That's what it's there for, to lend a helping hand to a fellow appraiser. You do not have to be a member of NAA to receive that support from the Appraiser Relief Fund. So please know that, and let all the appraisers that you know be aware of that. Until next time, stay safe, make some money, take a little mini vacation, and happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update Podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.